Well, welcome everybody once again to another episode of Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking. And I just want to welcome you all, like I always do, to my crypt for another amazing interview. I can't tell you guys how much fun I am doing these, have fun I'm doing, how much fun I'm having. I can't even talk tonight, apparently. Doing these interviews, I'm meeting a lot of great people, a lot of great guests on a lot of great topics, and I'm really glad that you guys are enjoying these interviews. I've got emails let me know that you guys are really enjoying them, and I've even had emails you guys let me know what guests you want me to get on in the future, so it's pretty cool. I got a lot of different guests coming up in the future. I've already got a lot of shows already in the can that I'm going to be posting up on the channel very shortly, so definitely always keep an eye on it. Turn on your notifications, and all that good stuff so you know when I post another interview. And that would be amazing if you do, because I super appreciate you guys that come here, subscribe, and watch my premieres and talk about the cases that we cover. I just super appreciate that, guys, and I cannot thank you enough. So thank you so much, because it is great to, I enjoy doing these interviews, and I enjoy having you guys to interact with and get your guys' thoughts on the topics that we're covering. So, as I said, thank you so much. But enough babbling from me. I got a great guest this evening. I'm excited to have him on here. I've been wanting to get him on for over a month now because I've read one of his books, and I'm waiting for another one of his books in the mail. So I can't wait till it gets here. It should be here anytime. So I'm just going to go ahead and introduce my guest right here for you. Let me just go ahead and bring him in here. Hello, how are you, Drew Beeson? I'm so happy to have you here at the crypt. Thank you for making the time to come and talk to me.
Glad to be here, Rick.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I'm just going to show everybody here the book that I have already read that you've wrote. I love interviewing authors, Drew. I really do, because as we were saying before we started shooting this interview, I'm trying to write a book, and it's a book just on my life. You think it would be simple, and as I told you, I've got about 500 pages. It's a mess. I have no idea how you guys do this and make this look so amazing and make it read so well. So I really enjoy. I have a mad respect for authors like you, but I'm just going to show people. So this is Drew's first book here, Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer. And my screen's a little dark here, but actually it lights up pretty good. So there's the book, guys. I'm going to leave a link for this in the description, plus with his other book that we're going to be talking about, Paratrooper of Fortune. And that's Drew's second book. So we're going to be talking a little bit about each of these books. So there it is, and I will leave links for this. Make sure you pick up this book if you are into true crime, especially Zodiac, because he is great. I mean, I love this book, Drew. I mean, I was telling you before, you've got everything in here. You've got pictures, you've got like all these different pictures of all the different parts of the case, and it just really helps understand this case. So I wanted to ask you to start off with, what made you want to write a book, and then B, write a book about the Zodiac Killer? Like, where did this all start for you?
Now, that's a hard one with Zodiac, because I've always had a little knowledge about that case, not a lot. And I ran into a guy. I was actually doing some audio demos with the guy, and he brought the Zodiac case up to me, and he said, "What do you think about the Zodiac?" And I was like, "Well, I know it a little bit." And he kind of renewed my interest in the whole thing, and that was about 3.5 years ago. And I started getting more interested in it just because of him, and we wanted to do a podcast together because he had a little podcast studio, and I just started trying to learn as much as I could about the case to do a podcast with him. And I watched a documentary called His Name is Arthur Lee Allen that came out in conjunction with a movie called Zodiac by David Fincher, that was based on a novel by Robert Graysmith that really popularized the Zodiac case. And that film and documentary came out in 2007 together. So, the documentary had been on YouTube for a long time. And at that point, I hadn't even seen the movie Zodiac, and most people have. And, so I was a little late to the party. And after seeing that documentary, I then saw the movie and just started trying to learn everything I could about it, and just got inspired to write about it after pretty much watching that documentary. It really just sucked me in big time.
Me too, right? Yeah, I that's what I first got I've known about the Zodiac case, and I probably along the way over the years have watched a couple documentaries that along the time, but I've watched so many documentaries I kind of lose track. And then I saw the movie, and I remember seeing the movie, and I was like, wow, like, to me, they did a really good job on the movie, like, from my point of view. I mean, I don't know like I haven't dug as deep into this case as a lot of other researchers have, and you guys have. So, and I've read the book now, but I definitely the movie was really intriguing. Like, what did you think of the movie? Like, from
That was good. I thought it was really good. It was definitely well made. I mean, Fincher's a great movie maker, and he had some A-list Hollywood people in it. Robert Downey Jr., Jake Gyllenhaal, playing Robert Graysmith, the guy that wrote the book Zodiac, that got it on the map in the first place. So he had a lot of star power. Because John Carroll Lynch played the main suspect in the movie, which is Arthur Lee Allen. He'll come up a lot in my stuff, and it's just really well done, well shot, and I think he did a great job.
Yeah, I do too. I thought it was really well done, and so that's why I want to get your take on it. Because anybody that researches it, I like to ask them, "Have you seen the movie?" They all say they have, and then I like to ask them what they thought of it. And I've heard everybody said they really enjoyed it. And the only reason I asked that a lot of it is because I definitely look into the David Crowley case, and they did a documentary too, like, well, kind of a documentary if you want to call it that. And so I watched that on Netflix about 3 or 4 times, and then I asked people that are following the David Crowley case and researching that what they thought of it, and it's just bad reviews all the way down the board. So I just like to get people's opinions on that. But yeah, definitely a great movie. So let's just say that let's start it where this right here, Drew. Somebody that doesn't know, I don't know anybody out there that doesn't probably know the Zodiac case, but can you kind of break down the Zodiac case, what it entitles? Just give us a broad view for somebody that might not know who the Zodiac killer is or the case or anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, these were crimes that happened in Northern California in late 1968. They started in December of 1968 and went up to September of 1969, the final, what we call the canonical Zodiac crime. There was 4 of them. And those are what's, called the main 4 Zodiac crimes. And there's other crimes that, I know Ross follows a lot, which we call non-canonical crimes. These are ones that are not directly known to be Zodiac, but could be. So, I mean, these are question mark cases, like the murder of Sherry Joe Bates in 1966 in Riverside, California, would be what we call a non-canonical crime. But it's basically four crimes that took place, like I said, starting on December 20th, 1968, and going up to September 1969 in San Francisco, California. So 4 crimes all in the Bay Area of San Francisco. And what made the Zodiac killer stand out was that he taunted the police. He wrote letters to the newspapers, and he would taunt them, trying to catch me if you can, kind of thing. He wrote ciphers, which are messages that are hidden in cryptic codes. And his first cipher was sent out at the end of July 1969. It was what they call a 3-part cipher. It went to 3 different Bay Area newspapers. And if you put all 3 pieces together, they would make one message. And that was called the Zodiac's 408 cipher, because there was 408 total characters in it. And a school teacher broke that with his wife. They just look, they printed it in the paper, so everybody had access to it. And a guy named Donald Gene Harden and his wife Betty sat at their kitchen table trying to figure this out. And they were pretty smart people, and they liked puzzles and solving puzzles. And they kept thinking, the Zodiac was going to be egotistical, so he'd write something like, use the word "I" a lot. And then they knew the word "kill" would probably be in there. So they started with that and deciphered some of the letters, and they wound up deciphering that entire cryptogram from the Zodiac. And of course, it was didn't give his identity. He always hinted that he would give his identity, but he never did. And that's where it started with the ciphers. And about a year and a half or so ago, a team of 3 guys, one led by an American named Dave Aranchek, was able to break one of the longest running unbroken Zodiac ciphers. It was called the 340 cipher, because there's 340 characters in this team of 3 guys. One was a Belgian named Jarl van Eck, and an Australian named Sam Blake was a mathematician. All these 3 guys got together, just obsessed with that cipher and trying to break it. And they finally did, with the help of a computer program and a lot of hard work. And it took over 50 years to break it. And of course, it did not give the identity of the Zodiac, but that cipher, of course, was a lot more complex than the 408. And there's only 2 ciphers that Zodiac sent that were of any length. I mean, there's some shorter ones that they think are probably impossible to break because there's just not enough characters. There's a 32 symbol cipher. There's another one called the My Name Is cipher, and it's got relatively few characters. So they believe there's so many different variables, or there's so many different solutions could go into those shorter ones that they're almost impossible to break. So there's probably not going to be another cipher break in the future because they're just too short. according to these guys that really understand those. And I'm definitely not a cipher guy. I never really tried to go in that direction. Oddly enough, my name shows up in the decoded Zodiac 408 cipher, which is funny because my name's not that common, and it's in there. Another guy found it. It wasn't even me. Another guy found that, which I thought was funny. So I always bring that up.
Yeah, that's crazy, and I didn't realize it was like 50 years to break that second code. So so he was
50.
using different codes then, right? From the first one to the second one, was it?
He used different techniques. The first one was just a simple substitution cipher where a symbol would just substitute to another letter, so it was a lot easier to break. And I think the 340, the one that took over 50 years to break, they do what's they call transpositioning, and it went diagonally, and it was in 3 different parts. And I think even the Zodiac made a couple of mistakes coding it, so that made it even harder to break. And it took a really advanced computer program and 3 really smart guys to finally break that thing.
So then the Zodiac was not, because I've talked to people, and a lot of people say that some people think he was smart and some people think he wasn't. I mean, you know, you're always going to get opinions. To me, he doesn't sound like a stupid man at all by any means if he's doing this type of code and stuff like that. Like, what is
he's smart.
Yeah, very. And where did this code come from? I've always wondered that. Like, is it like, does it stem from somewhere like military?
Some people speculate it could have been somebody that had some kind of code training in the military. That comes up a lot,
right?
From what I know about code breaking, I'm definitely not a code guy at all, but I know a lot of those were machines that you would feed the code into a machine. Like even in Vietnam, when you were trying to break codes and stuff in Vietnam, you would literally feed it into a machine, and that would give you a key. And then be done like that. But I think the origins of the Zodiac being interested in ciphers was more basic than that. It wasn't somebody that just had some training in the military. I think it was just more something he really liked and liked to figure out puzzles and just like the whole riddle of it. Some speculate he got that from the Batman comics. Dave Aranchek, one of the guys that broke the 340 cipher, did a really great video on YouTube about how Zodiac may have been influenced by comics, which has been kicked around in the Zodiac a lot. Mainly Western stuff like Tim Holt and Red Rider, but he started putting out stuff on his video. Maybe you've been influenced more things just like this, the older Batman stuff with some of the phrases he would use. And then all the decoder stuff, like you would get in the magazines back in the day, you had decoder rings and different clubs you could be in where they decode stuff like that. So, he just puts out there, that this is where he could have picked it up just from being a kid in the 50s and maybe the late 40s, and picked up on these, decoder magazines and superhero kind of thing, where could have been the origins of why he did it.
Wow, I've heard that too. I remember hearing something about that where they thought that he was definitely influenced by possibly influenced by comic books, I should say. And I could definitely see what you're saying. I do remember that as a kid, that you had codes and stuff that you would get, and you had to send away for the decoder ring and all of that. I remember that. You're making me think, wow. And so I'm thinking, and it could be.
They did that in the 40s. I mean, in the 1940s, that was going around too.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It's something to definitely think about. I've always wondered that about the code, and you will see some of that in Russ's book here. That's what I like about your book. Like I said, you have a lot of pictures in there of the code and all of that kind of stuff. And when I look at it, it just looks like gibberish. I mean, I'm just like, it's really, but I like the way your book shows it, and shows a lot of things. You got the picture that everybody knows about the Zodiac with the hood, with that black hood on with the symbol, which I think everybody knows that iconic picture. I did interview, as you were saying, and we were talking about the pre-Zodiac killers, and people think that maybe he was practicing or trying to get his method down, and stuff like that. And we've talked about that. What do you what are your thoughts on the pre-Zodiac murders? Do you think there's any truth to it? Do you think that
I'm kind of split? I'm split on that. I'm pretty much split. As far as the Sherry Jo Bates murder, which is the most well-known non-canonical Zodiac crime, a lot of people throw it out there as a canonical crime. It's not. First, it happened in Southern California, not in the Bay Area, so that differentiates it. And then it was in 1966 before the first canonical Zodiac crime in 1968. But on that particular crime, I probably have gone from 50-50 of that being a Zodiac crime to probably less than 10% as
Oh,
time goes
really?
on.
Okay.
I just don't think that was Zodiac. He claimed it in a letter. He said, "I see you have stumbled upon my Riverside activity." So by making that statement, he's kind of laying claim to it. But he was a boaster, and he would like to lay claims to things he didn't do. Uh, so I
That's
really
true.
lean against that being a Zodiac crime. There was another crime called Gaviota Beach in Central California, where a high school couple had senior skip day and they were engaged to be married, and they were murdered on Gaviota Beach in 1963. Um, Robert Dominguez and Linda Edwards were their names. And that one seemed like a Zodiac crime. It was very similar to Lake Berryessa, where the Zodiac was wearing the Zodiac hood and everything. Of course, this guy wasn't that they know of, but because he killed both victims, so no
Exactly.
one survived to tell about it. But, he was using a 22 rifle around, and there were some similar things. It seemed like could have been the Zodiac in that crime. I mean, I think if any one of the non-canonical crimes was Zodiac, I think it would probably be that one of Linda, Robert Dominguez and Linda Edwards. But I kind of lean against it. I think he probably just did the main four, but I'm open to the rest.
Right. Yeah. I definitely, because it's a great way to look at it because, and I definitely, when I looked at it and we did the interview on it and I kind of I was like I've watched some videos on it too about the pre-Zodiac killers. I find it very interesting because it does make you wonder if he was trying to perfect his craft before he started. But I kind of agree that he was such a boaster because he definitely was. Like I mean, look what he was doing. He was taunting the police every chance he got. That I think if he'd done any of these other murders, he would have boasted about it sooner. Is my opinion.
That's
Uh,
true. That's true. And he would say things. He called it when he called his victims slaves. I mean,
Slaves.
basically referred to his victims as slaves. Never referred to them by name. In the Sherry Joe Bates crime, he said Bates had to die, so he's using her name in one of the correspondences that was in that crime. And that's one of the things that makes it seem like a Zodiac crime because there were letters sent in. But the Zodiac never wrote a correspondence with one of his confirmed victims' names on it ever. So that kind of differentiates it a lot. So
I think so. Yeah, I
it's
definitely.
just
Yeah,
different.
it's just different, but it makes you wonder. Like maybe I don't know. Like I said, like maybe he did, and then he decided he wasn't going to use names. Who knows? I think it's a really interesting.
Yeah.
And there is some, in my opinion, there's a little smoke there when you start looking into it. But I mean, I just wondering how much fire is there because I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, like
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
yeah,
It
like
is like, yeah, he liked to call his victims slaves. And when he used a count, it would only be the victims of the canonical crimes. It
right.
wouldn't be when he mentioned his slave count. But then later he would brag, I've killed, people all over Northern California, Nevada. So he would start bragging about more.
Right.
Collection of slaves for the afterlife is one thing the Zodiac always liked to taunt.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, strange. Like I remember that when I watched that movie, it was actually that after I saw that movie, it was disturbing. Like I mean, when you think about people like that out in the world, like I don't know, I just get a weird feeling about this case and that's what probably drew me into it that's why I got your book and that because I'm starting to look into it more and more because it's one of those cases and yeah, I mean, that movie just gave me a weird feeling when I saw it, and I've watched it a couple times because it's just a great movie, and I thought that it kind of breaks it down for somebody that's learning about the case, and so yeah,
Yeah, it does. It's a great starting point.
exactly, yeah, and so like just so somebody that maybe has not, like I said, I'm trying to approach this kind of Drew like a little bit from somebody that maybe does not know much about Zodiac or is barely maybe they've seen the picture of the hood. I think even my mom, I asked her if she recognized that picture and she knew it was Zodiac, but she knew nothing about the case. I mean, that's how iconic that picture is that's in your book with
Mm-hmm.
him wearing the hood and the symbol and stuff like that. So can
Uh-huh.
you let people know what was the first murder? Can you kind of describe the first murder that is actually confirmed as Zodiac and we know it's him and stuff like that? Can you kind of break that case just to give us a starting point?
Yeah, the first confirmed Zodiac murder, what happened at a place called Lake Herman Road in Benicia, California, right outside of Vallejo, California. And it happened on December 20th of 1968. There was a young couple that were out on a first date, and this was basically a little turnout. on a really pitch black dark road that kind of connected Benicia and Vallejo. And first date, they were in a Rambler station wagon, and they were parked, of course. And David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were their names. And they were just sitting in the car, and a man walked up to them and just started shooting them while they were inside the car. Betty Lou got out, and she was shot in the back. And I think David Faraday was killed, while he was still sitting in the passenger seat. Correct. I think Betty Lou was behind the wheel. I don't remember, but she tried to run, was shot in the back. And then David Faraday was shot. I think he lived for a little while, but he died on the way to the hospital. And I think Betty Lou died immediately. So it was a young couple. I think they were both 18, Lover's Lane, just parked, doing whatever young kids would do on a date. And they were both murdered. So that's the first crime attributed to Zodiac was Lake Herman Road in 1968.
Wow. So, yeah, I'm just wondering, so do you think with Zodiac, it was a lovers thing? Like my friend was asking me that. He was like, I think he had a thing against lovers and stuff like that. Like he seemed to go after couples and that. And I was like, oh, well, I'll ask. I mean, I kind of see it that way. I mean, do you think he had something against that whole, like, I mean, it's hard to kind of ask that question. Like, was he against couples or what they were doing, or?
It certainly looks that way because,
right.
That was considered a lover's lane. It was a turnout, but that's somewhere kids could go and park, and it wasn't a big area. Yeah, make out place. I mean, they were young. So that's what it looked like. And then the second crime was also on what could have been considered a lover's lane. It was another couple. It was a married lady and the guy that she was, she dated around a lot. Her name was Darlene Farron and Michael Mageau. And that crime happened on July 4th of 1969. So it was a pretty good amount of time in between the first two canonical crimes between December 20th, 1968 and July 4th, 1969. You're talking a nice solid 6 months in between. So I don't know what caused that layoff, but there was a good amount of time in between those crimes. But the second one, was similar in the fact that you could consider it a lover's lane. A couple was parked. It was right about midnight. And they went to go get fireworks or something, and they just decided to go talk and go park in a place called Blue Rock Springs Park. And a car pulls up behind them first, and they look back there, and they think maybe it's the police or something. And then the car leaves. And then another car comes back just a few minutes later, parks right behind them. And a man gets out, and he's got a flashlight, a really bright flashlight. He walks over to the passenger side where Michael Mageau is sitting in the passenger seat, and he shines the light. And they were so convinced it was a police officer that they started getting their IDs out.
Right.
And he's shining the light in Michael Mageau's face, and then he just pulls out a weapon and he starts shooting them both. Michael Mageau's thrashing around. He flings himself almost into the back seat, and he shoots Darlene Farron. I think she was still alive, and they're both actually still alive at this point after they took this first volley of gunshots. Michael Mageau's groaning from the pain of the gunshots. The Zodiac's walking back to his car at that point. Here's Michael Mageau moaning, and he goes back and he puts a few more rounds into him. Yeah, but he doesn't kill him. Michael Mageau survives, and Darlene Farron dies on the way to the hospital, unfortunately. So she could never even describe anything from her point of view as far as what he looked like or anything like that, because she was already dying. And one of the police officers actually rode with her to the hospital, Richard Hoffman, and which a lot of people, he kind of becomes a suspect later because people thought it was weird that he rode with her. But and I don't think he is, but it's one of those things with this case, everything gets dissected. And unfortunately with Darlene Farron, she was married at the time. But she dated a lot of guys, and and she was married before her current husband that was married to at the time she was murdered. So it just takes you down the deepest rabbit hole in the Zodiac case is Darlene Farron, unfortunately, because she dated so many men, and could have been revenge, or the ex-husband, or the current husband's mad that she's dating this guy. So it takes you down this tremendous rabbit hole, which really goes nowhere, by the way. You can go down it all you want. It's never going to bear any fruit, unfortunately. And it's just one of those, it's actually unfortunate in this case because so many people get hung up on that. But nonetheless, she didn't deserve to die. Michael Mageau survives. Gives a description of who he thought he saw.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did the police have a description?
He gave a description
at this point.
Yeah, he gave the first description of the Zodiac, but like I said, he had a bright flashlight in his face. He describes a stocky guy, about 5'8", 5'9". He kind of described his hair as being short and not a lot of detail. And years later, he identifies Arthur Lee Allen, still prime suspect to this day, out of a photo lineup, which is very questionable. Him doing that, because I think he was really led to pick out the guy they wanted him to pick out.
I thought the same thing.
He had a really hard life. The guy had a really tough life after that event. A lot of crime, a lot of credit card fraud, a lot of drug and alcohol abuse. So he's not a good, especially in his later years. He was just a bad witness. Unfortunately, so he didn't, his description really doesn't provide much at all.
Right. And then him pointing it out, and like you said in the lineup, how much credit can you put to that, right? Because
at that point, people really heavily wanting to close the case. Things look really good for Arthur Lee Allen. They showed him a photo lineup, one of them being Arthur Lee Allen. I think they were kind of, what about him? We'll give you a ham sandwich and a six-pack. And he would have done it. Unfortunately, I hate to say that. It's terrible what happened to that guy, but I put zero stock in anything he said. I mean, just because he just really couldn't remember. Other than all the years of drug, alcohol abuse, crime. It's just unfortunate, how his life went. It's really tragic.
And that's the thing too, which I've always told people, that I know people think memory is a great thing and you remember things perfect. And unfortunately, I know for a fact you don't. So, I mean, the fact that all these years later, he can pick the guy out from the lineup and remember things like that. And especially with all the drug abuse and that he did, I mean, that's his memory would be sketchy at best.
Very sketchy.
And then he got a flashlight in his face.
Yeah, in the initial one, he had a bright flashlight in his face. And he just, he kind of remembered him coming up and kind of like the basic body style or whatever. But, he's in a seated position. Are you really going to get a good height description? You're sitting in a car and he's walking up. It's nighttime, too.
Yep.
It's night. It's midnight. She actually dies on the way to the hospital. So she dies on July 5th. But the flashlight in his face, it's just not a good witness. He's not. And, a lot of people like to hang their hat on, you identified Arthur Lee Allen. That means it's him. It's just, you can't go far with him at all, unfortunately.
Right. I agree. I thought that too. What I honestly did, the more research I do, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, just because I know how sketchy memory can be, because I know when I think I remember something perfect from years ago, if I go back and research enough, I remember wrong. And that's just the truth. So I get what you're saying.
It's not reliable.
Right.
When you get a bunch of people saying the same things, though, you could start to build on that. If you have all these separate witnesses, they all remember, hey, this was the black guy,
Yep.
If 4 different groups at 4 different times said that, you can be pretty confident it's a black guy at least. But yeah, on some of those specifics, it's just really difficult.
For sure, I agree totally on that. I'm glad we saw it, because I agree. I thought that too. So that's cool that we're on the same page with that. Now let's go, because I just want to cover the murder. The next one, the third one. Let's talk about that one quickly, because the third one's important.
Very important. You had mentioned before about the outfit that the Zodiac's wearing in that image. Well, that comes from the third canonical crime that happened at a place called Lake Berryessa, on a lake shore. There was another couple.
Yep.
Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard. They had known each other before, and they had dated earlier, and they ran into each other when she was visiting a college up there, and they ran into each other, and then they decided to hang out for the day. Brian Hartnell actually had a girlfriend, but this was an old flame, so they were spending some time together. They still, had some interest in each other, and they were going to go into the city of San Francisco and just spend the day. And they decided they didn't have enough time to, by the time they got over the bridge and everything, they just wouldn't have had a lot of time there. So they changed plans at pretty much the last minute. Decided to go to Lake Berryessa and have kind of like a little picnic, put out a blanket and read and just kind of spend some time together. So they go out there, and it's daylight. It's broad daylight. It's in the afternoon, and it's September 27th, and they're hanging out. The blanket's out there, and Brian's laying one way, and Cecilia's laying the opposite. Her head's basically where his feet are, so they're kind of lined up like that, just talking. And Cecilia notices a guy over there a little farther away, because they were sort of like little inlets, so they weren't too concerned because there was no there was no improved bathrooms or anything at Lake Berryessa at the time. You just go out behind a tree to go to the bathroom. So they see, she sees a man. He's not wearing any outfit at this point, but she sees a man pretty far off where she can't get a lot of detail. All she knows is he's a white man. And it kind of has her attention, and Brian's trying to talk to her like, hey, like, you're not paying attention to me. And it's because she's looking at this guy over away, and he's not too concerned about it because he's too far away at that point. So they kind of go about their business a little bit. And at that point, he's really moved up on him, and he's gotten a lot closer, and he's basically at a brisk walk. And at this point, he is wearing this thing, this hood, this black hood. It looks like an executioner's hood, which Brian calls a dicky or an overlay. It's black. It covers his head down to his, upper belt, down to his belly. And he's wearing what look like clip-on sunglasses over this hood. And he walks up to him, and he's got a gun in his right hand, like, he's going to rob him. And he, of course, they're alarmed by this, no doubt about it. And he said, and he immediately starts trying to calm them. He doesn't say he's Zodiac or anything like that. He says, hey, just relax. I just want your money and your car keys. So he just, so they start doing a little better. Okay, this guy just wants to rob us, He's wearing this crazy outfit, but he's saying he just wants to rob us. And Brian says, I only got some change in my pocket, but you're more than welcome to it. And, these are my keys. He was parked far up, on the main road. You have to walk pretty far down there to where they were on the little lake shore. And so he offers him whatever he's got. And he says, well, I want to get you tied up, So he gives them some pre-cut lines of rope to tie each other up. And they start thinking, this isn't, this is bad, because it's going to be cold out here at night. We don't want to be left out here all night. But Brian keeps trying to engage him in conversation. And, never ever once says I'm Zodiac. He just says, I'm going to rob you. But he has them tying each other up. So they tie each other up. And then Zodiac goes back and he makes sure that everything's tight and done well. And then he makes them lay on their bellies. And then out of nowhere, he starts stabbing Brian. And, he hears this chomp, 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 out of nowhere. And then Brian fakes death, and then he starts stabbing on Cecilia Shepard multiple times, and she's rolling around, thrashing. I think that probably made it a lot worse. But unfortunately, at one point, they were able to talk, and Brian would kind of ask Cecilia when this was all going on, hey, I think I can make a play on the gun, before he actually had him tied up. And she said, no, don't do that. And he kind of remembered, it's probably bad to make a move like that. Because if we just obey his commands, maybe we'll get out of this alive. But, but unfortunately, it went bad really quickly. And Brian Hartnell was 6'7", tall guy, young and tall. So he could have easily probably have overpowered him maybe, or got a chance to get that gun from the Zodiac, but he didn't. He missed the opportunity. He just got out of range. And unfortunately, they were both stabbed, and Cecilia Shepard wound up dying from her wounds about 2 days later. And Brian survives the attack. That's how we have obviously the description of what happened there and what the Zodiac was wearing and the cross circle logo, which Brian said was done neatly. He said it wasn't just scrawled on with paint; it was done neatly, as if it was sewn. Like this really meant something to the attacker. Personally, because it was so well done. Not something that, you wouldn't have just been able to go buy at a store and get. It was just the distinctive Zodiac cross circle logo, as we call it, which is the circle with the X going through the circle. And, but never says I'm Zodiac, which is one of the strangest things about it. So anyway, they're stabbed. The police show up. And what's really crazy is a park ranger named Dennis Land takes away the entire crime scene. They had a blanket with some of their items they had on it. He completely removes that after this is reported to the police. So when the police show up, there is no crime scene. The park ranger has already removed the entire crime scene. He took it to the guard shack or something.
That's crazy.
And that kind of lends towards the Zodiac hoax theory by my friend Thomas Horan about how all that comes in. But anyway, it's just very strange how the park ranger removes the crime scene.
Right. Yeah.
Very, very, very weird. But so after they're stabbed, Brian Hartnell is literally crawling to try to go get help. And Cecilia can't go anywhere. She's her wounds are too severe. And there's a guy comes by on a boat, and Brian's crying out to him, hey, we need help. We need help. And eventually he told somebody down the way, a couple of people in a boat, that they were attacked. And he finally makes it, he keeps crawling down this hillside, and he's picked up by that same park ranger. His name was Dennis Land. And so eventually they went and got help. The police show up. One of the officers interviews Cecilia Shepard and asked about, what did the guy look like? She said, well, he was white. And he said, well, I'm going to stand exactly because, she's still alive. She's bleeding terribly and she's cold. And he gives her his coat to stay warm. And so, but he's wanting to question her while this has happened. And she's still lucid enough to tell what happened. And he said, it was Deputy Dave Collins, by the way. And he said, I'm 5'10". I'm going to stand exactly where he was. She goes, how tall would you say he was? And she said, about 2 inches taller than you. That would have put Zodiac in her mind right at 6 feet. It's important. They asked the same thing of Brian, and Brian said, well, I think he was around 6 feet, but I'm a terrible judge of height because it's always down, because he was 6'7", really tall guy. So he didn't, but Brian described him as stocky and kind of like had a belly on him. And they said, they talked about everything that happened there, and it was really weird. One thing that sticks out to me that's really strange is when they were being attacked, Brian kept wanting to, engage him in conversation just to get him to, keep on talking so he could figure anything out. And, he's taking a sociology class at the time. So he thought maybe he could squeeze a paper out of it. Cause at that point he didn't know he was going to be stabbed.
Right.
And he keeps trying to get him to talk. And he remembered that sometimes these guys will commit crimes with a gun and the gun will be unloaded. So the penalties will be less severe. Like, yeah, I used a gun, but it was unloaded. And I knew it was unloaded when I did it. So maybe the sentencing would be less if he got caught. So Brian has the presence of mind to ask the Zodiac. He said, is your gun really loaded? Because sometimes I've heard that they're unloaded because of this and that. And at that point, it wouldn't matter because he's already tied up. He can't do anything about it, right? And he said the Zodiac took the magazine out of the gun and showed him that it was loaded. It was fully loaded magazine that he had in his gun. So I just thought that was interesting that he would take the time. The Zodiac would take the time to take the magazine out and show him that the gun was loaded because he couldn't do anything about it anyway. But it just kind of gives you some thought that this guy's thinking clearly. This isn't just some deranged maniac where he would have been. If you're that out of your mind, you're really going to have the presence of mind to take that out to show the guy. Yeah, it's loaded, dude.
Have the rope that's already
pre-cut rope links.
Yeah, and that's what I want to ask you. Do you think that this is this is I wonder the most. Do you think he was stalking that spot, or do you think he was following them?
I think he was stalking that spot, probably waiting for the right victims. I think the victims were random, but I think that he probably was stalking that spot. Maybe he saw them somewhere a little earlier, but like I said, they were going to go into the city that day.
That's true.
So they definitely weren't. They definitely weren't targeted. At least not at that point. If they were targeted, it had to have happened when they decided not to go to San Francisco.
Right. Yeah.
So I think he was probably scouting that area. And just waiting for the right victims.
Right. It would make sense because when she first saw him, he didn't have that outfit on, right? So that would make sense that he was kind of waiting.
Yeah,
for the right moment.
He didn't have it.
Right. And what did the police think after they get this description of the hood and all of that? This must have sent them like down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what this hood is.
They didn't know what to think. They just thought they were dealing with a madman. They really didn't know what to think of that. It was just really strange to them why this guy would be wearing this elaborate outfit when he never, described that he was a Zodiac or anything weird like that. And that's just a really odd crime. And, one thing that basically kind of ties in Blue Rock Springs and Lake Berryessa attack, that there was a phone call after each of those crimes to the police. It says, I killed these people. Here, and then when he called in about Berryessa, he describes where it happened. Same with Blue Rock Springs. He said you have to go. He gave some basic directions that people have really analyzed. Like, would a local say it this way, or would the guy just that kind of casually knew the area say it the way he did it? But that's one of the things that's similar between the two middle crimes out of the canonical crimes, that there was a phone call after both. There was no phone call after Lake Herman Road, or the fourth canonical crime, which was a murder of cab driver named Paul Stein.
Yeah, let's hit that one, and then we'll move on to your next book. I mean, I'm fascinated. You've got me right glued here. So let's talk about the fourth one. We got the three we've talked about. Now they got a description. He's a stocky guy. And just so we clear it, I just want to end the last murder. They never see him wearing this outfit again, correct? This is the one time that they see him with the outfit, and that's it.
One and only time. It was seen by one person, and it's one person's word. And Brian Hartnell goes on to be he's a probate lawyer in California. I think he's pretty old now, but I think he's still practicing. But really smart guy, really credible witness, but he's the only one that ever sees that.
Okay, perfect. So I was just, yeah, I just wanted to clear that because I've had people ask me that. They're like, well, did they, in the next crime that he takes credit for, was he wearing the outfit? And I said, not from what I can tell. The research I've done, he wasn't. At least there was no
No,
witnesses that said that. So let's cover the
no,
last
no.
one that's attributed to him.
The last one was the murder of a single cab driver, a male named Paul
Yeah, this
Stein.
is weird.
On October 13th, 1969. He was in the Presidio, which is kind of a higher end area of downtown San Francisco, kind of where the wealthier people lived and stuff. And those San Francisco style houses is where it happened. And somewhere along the line, Paul Stein picks up a fare, and it's Zodiac. And he tells him, where to go, and it's in the Presidio near Washington Cherry Streets. And when he pulls over to let him out of the cab, he gets shot, I think right above his right ear with a 9mm, just execution style, just kills him in cold blood. He doesn't even know it's coming. And the really weird thing after that, it was after he's shot and killed, the Zodiac somehow cuts a piece of Paul Stein's shirt tail, like a nice size chunk of his bloody shirt. It's covered in blood. And he did that because he wanted to prove later on that it was him when he's going to write letters about it. So he includes a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt saying, like, I'm going to claim this murder and you're going to believe me because I have a piece of his bloody shirt
right.
that that is correct, because they still have the rest of it to match up to it. So that was the really, bizarre thing of that. There was only 3 witnesses to that crime, which were 3 siblings named the Robins, the oldest being 13, a boy named Lindsay. It was the oldest of the 3, and that's right. Where the famous Zodiac composite comes from. It's from these 3 kids, basically, the oldest being 13. So we're not talking about adults here that they're giving their input. It's basically the 13-year-old is the lead one,
right?
And he gives a description of the guy, the famous Zodiac sketch with the crew cut. And all those details, because they saw the Zodiac wiping down Paul Stein's cab. They were in their house across the street, and it was night. So it's pretty dark. So, but that whole sketch is based on the input of those kids. There was also a police officer that named Donald Falk that he believes he saw the Zodiac that night,
right?
And most people believe that he did. And he saw the sketch that was developed from the input of those kids. And he basically looked at it and said, yeah, it looks pretty close to what I saw. This is a little different, maybe a little bit different here and there. But he said overall, he agreed with the sketch. So, but he did not have any input on it, though. It all came from those kids. So that's where we get the famous Zodiac sketch that you see mostly.
Right. Yeah. And I've read, too, that a lot of people think that Zodiac was watching the police after that murder, right? Like he was kind of from a distance. And do you put any credence to that? Like, did you think he was watching when the police discovered the bodies or stuff?
Yeah,
like that?
A lot of that goes on. A lot of that is talked about, especially after that crime. He wrote letters after that, of course, with the shirt piece in it, so they know it's him.
Right.
That's one of the main things that ties in the Zodiac letters and correspondence to the actual murders. Because you can just separate it. You can just say, like, the hoax theories, like, we have a different person writing the murders, taking credit for these murders, but not doing the actual murders. And then you could have had either one or a group of people actually committing these crimes. And then someone just decides, well, I'm going to take credit for them and just sending crap to the police and the newspapers just to screw them all up.
Right.
So the main definitive link between the actual murders and the correspondence that's coming in is that shirt.
For sure, yeah. I found the one the cab one bothers me the most because it's so different. Like you have the other ones that are couples, and then this one
just single guy.
Yeah, and this is a single guy, wipes down the whole cab, takes this trophy of like the piece of shirt, and he doesn't do that with the other ones. I find
didn't do it weird. At all. And with Lake Berryessa, he never even mentions it in a letter. Never mentions that crime in a letter. The only time he records it is on Brian Hartnell's car door. He had a Volkswagen Carmen
Tell
Ghia.
People that. Right. I was going to ask you about that.
I forgot to mention that's important.
Yeah.
So Brian Hartnell drove a Volkswagen Carmen Ghia at the time, and he was parked up on the main road where you'd walk down to where they were at the beach that day at Lake Berryessa. And at some point, the Zodiac drew on his car door, and he wrote in the dates of all his crimes up to that point. He put in the dates of Lake Herman Road, December 20th of 1968. He put Blue Rock Springs. He wrote down as July 4th, 1969. And then he wrote the date of that crime that day, which was September 27th of 1969. He put SCPT. And then the other ones, he just put numbers. But oddly, for that one he had done that day, he wrote in SCPT instead of a 9, which was kind of odd. But I think everything that he did like that meant something. It was either a code hidden there, or there's a reason. He always had a reason that meant something to him why he did things. But he did write on that car door, and some of the handwriting experts said, yeah, definitely that handwriting matches up to the other letters, but it's never conclusive. It's just not an exact science. But it's pretty confident that the Zodiac, wrote on that car door with some kind of, like, they didn't have Sharpies back then, but it was like a Sharpie type marker, like a Marks-a-Lot or something, this thick black pen. And they still have that car door. They still have the car door in evidence in Napa, the Napa Police Department. It's covered, so it's protected, but they still have that piece in evidence. They removed the entire car door and covered it to preserve that. So it's just weird, but he never brings up that crime in a letter again, which is strange. He never said, I killed that couple on Lake Berryessa. Never brings it up in a letter, which is really strange.
That's what I thought too. And that's the thing I'm finding too. When I started looking into this case, Drew, is like I've went down so many rabbit holes already, because the more I talk to people, so many people have different opinions on who did it. And I'm learning this the hard way. Yeah. And I'm just like, wow. And I've went down a few rabbit holes, and that was just that's always bothered me, the cab one, for some reason, because it's just so it's really
out
of character
how he'd break from that. There's a few theories on why he did it.
What do you think? I'd like to hear your theory.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the one, of course, Paul Avery, played by Robert Downey Jr. in the Zodiac movie. Paul Avery became pretty famous by reporting on the Zodiac crimes, and of course he plays a big role in my theory. I think he was kind of taunting the Zodiac back, like, oh, you're murdering these little couples, you're like, you're not a man, or something like that, or maybe you're gay, or maybe you're homosexual, because you're whatever, like, you don't have the guts to attack a man or something like that. So maybe it was one, maybe he felt like he was being called out. And remember, there was 2 survivors that were both males, and Michael Mougeot and Brian Hartnell both survived. They did not die. The only man that had died at that point was David Faraday, the young kid at Lake Herman Road. So at that point, only that young David Faraday, the 18-year-old, had died. So it could have been the fact that he didn't finish off Brian Hartnell and Mike Mougeot. So, they were kind of like, oh, you can't finish off the men, but you made sure the women died, kind of thing. It could have been. So he decided just to go kill a man just to prove it, and made sure that he was killed point blank. And
he had the proof for it.
I buy into that.
Yeah,
and he had the proof. Yeah, he made sure he had the proof.
That actually, now that you break it down like that, that makes really good sense. That was just like, oh, you don't think I can't kill a man? All right, and then he does it, and he makes sure. Yeah, I'll show you, and he makes sure that everybody knows he was the man to do it. So that's a great. Yeah, that's really cool. You broke that down really good. So this is. Thank you so much, Drew. I'm learning so much. I really enjoyed talking to you and about this. So to wrap this one up, this book here, and this case, I should say, that we're talking about. And who is your best suspect? Who do you think Zodiac? Because I know my friends wanted me to ask you, who do you think did it, and why?
Well, this is the easiest way to explain it. Again, going back to the movie, assuming people have watched the movie, we just kind of gave a basic overview of the movie, but the movie was based on a book by Robert Graysmith, who did take some liberties in writing it. But the main suspect that is talked about in his book, called Zodiac, and he uses an anonymous name for the person that he feels was Zodiac, uses the name Robert Hall Starr. Well, that's not the person's real name. We later find out that this person's name is Arthur Lee Allen. And today, Arthur Lee Allen is still the prime number 1 suspect of the Zodiac crimes. He was never convicted. He died in 1992. And a lot of police officers that were investigating this case in multiple jurisdictions, a lot of them went to their graves believing that Arthur Lee Allen was indeed the Zodiac killer. Because there's a lot of good circumstantial evidence that points to Arthur Lee Allen. They tested his DNA after he died from some DNA they got from outside of a stamp on one of the Zodiac letters. And it was a really weak partial profile. And I don't really believe they have the Zodiac DNA. I really don't. Not at this point. If they do, they haven't announced it. But the one that they tested Arthur Lee Allen against off of a letter sent in 1969 was weak. came from the outside of a postage stamp, not the other side where he may have licked it or the flap of the letter.
That's true.
So Arthur Lee Allen wasn't a match for that DNA sample. His fingerprints didn't match. His handwriting didn't match. But of course, they didn't want to give up on him because he was otherwise such a compelling suspect. They got handwriting samples from him. He was ambidextrous to an extent, so they thought, okay, the guy's born left-handed, but he could also write right-handed, so maybe he's just throwing us off with that, which was one of the things speculated about him. But the important thing is he had a lot of good circumstantial evidence, and I'll just give one piece of that towards Arthur Lee Allen that's most compelling to me that he was involved at some level. Was one thing the Zodiac did that you see mostly throughout his correspondences. He liked to intentionally misspell words, that if you read the word, it was spelled wrong, but if you read it, it would still sound the same phonetically.
Okay.
And the Zodiac loved doing this. And this is one of the ones I like to say the most. Is one of his favorite words was paradise, but he spelled it Paradice and not Disce, which is the correct spelling. But if you looked at that and saw Paradice, you would still sound like the other spelling, because phonetically it's still the same. That's so the Zodiac, he wasn't a bad speller, because there was a lot of harder words that he did spell correctly, but he would do that with different words. That's something that Arthur Lee Allen did before the crimes. He liked to do that. That's a really weird trait. Yeah, he had even the police found a grocery list at his house, and he spelled eggs AIGS for eggs. Of course that's EGGS, but he put AIGS. He went by it's really a strange thing, and his sister-in-law said he did it. His younger brother said this is something he did, and he did this before the Zodiac ever gets on the radar.
Exactly.
So very compelling that he had that habit.
Because I don't know anybody that does that. I'm trying to think.
I've never known anybody in my life that did that.
No.
That's why I can't believe. That's why you can't turn away from Arthur Lee Allen. Unfortunately, because of things like that, he went by the nickname Big Al a lot.
Right.
And when he would sometimes he'd sign a letter, he would say Big Al, and he would say instead of BIG, he would put BEEG for big. Because if you put BEG, it would look like beg.
Yep.
But BEEG is big in that weird way. So he would sign a letter Big Al, BEEG, Al, AL for So that's a really strange thing. And then another one, I mean, there's plenty, but another one was he had a Zodiac Seawolf model wristwatch.
I remember asking about this. This is great.
He got that for Christmas of 1967. It's very important when he got the watch.
Exactly.
And his brother confirmed that because his younger brother got an identical watch. Arthur Lee Allen was a skin diver. He would dive without the equipment. The more shallow diving he did. He was a really good platform diver in high school and college. He was a state champion at diving. He was really good at it. They said he could hardly walk right, but once he got up to that diving board, he was like poetry in motion. I mean, this guy was good at it. He was also really adept at the trampoline, which is weird. He could do all these flips and tricks on a trampoline. It would teach the neighborhood kids, but he had a Zodiac model wristwatch. And no matter what anyone says, those watches were not that common back then. It's a higher end watch. It still is today. They still sell that brand of watch, and they're not like a Rolex, but they're still going to run $800-900, maybe $1,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
And even back then, they were $200 watches, so they were on a higher end of watch. So they were not that common back then. And what's rare about the watch is it has that cross circle logo, the circle with the X, what we call the cross circle logo, and it has the name Zodiac. They don't come together like that. When you have both the cross circle logos, you can find that logo different places, but it doesn't come with the name Zodiac with it. Very rare that those two come together. And one of the only places in modern history they come together is where that wristwatch and that brand uses both. So you cannot easily just discard, anybody had that damn watch. No, I truly believe that the Zodiac took his name from Arthur Lee Allen's wristwatch.
Wow. I always thought that was crazy too. And what's it like? I mean, coincidence. I mean, a lot of people say it could be a coincidence. I don't know. I don't believe in coincidences that.
I don't either.
Not like that.
Not like that. It's too much. It's too much to turn away from.
Right.
But there's things that point away from Arthur Lee Allen that are compelling as well.
That's a good thing now. Yeah, perfect.
One thing, he was totally bald at the time. Most witnesses of the Zodiac said that he had hair. Donald Falk at the Presidio said he had a widow's peak, where it was balding on both sides, but not completely bald. In 1968, Arthur Lee Allen was already completely bald. So going back to Lake Berryessa, where he's wearing this outfit, both victims, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, saw through the mask where he has these clip-on glasses over the black hood. They could see brown hair coming through the eyelet of the mask. So if that was Arthur Lee Allen or another dude, they saw the hair. They both said it separately. So this is not some kind of folklore in the case. This is in the police files. They both saw the brown hair coming through the eyelet. So if it was Arthur Lee Allen at Lake Berryessa, then he had to have been wearing a wig. And to me, that's ridiculous because already have a hood. You're already covered. You don't need a wig as a disguise because you already have that hood over your face. So if you're going to get into tussle, which you almost did with the 6'7" guy, that wig is going to come over your eyes and you're going to be blinded. And that 6'7" guy is going to get the upper hand really quick if that wig shifts.
Right.
So it's preposterous. So that really, there's things like that point away from Arthur Lee Allen. So here's my solution. How do you jive all that great stuff that he has, but also explain the stuff that's against him? Well, because the killer was actually someone that knew him, knew he misspelled words for comedic effect.
What about his brother? You said they both.
His brother's pretty straight up guy. He's a landscape designer. His name was Ronald Allen. And, Ron was pretty straight up with the cops and everything like that. Sometimes you'll hear everybody connected Arthur Lee Allen thrown out as a secondary suspect, but there's no better secondary suspect than his buddy Powell, who brought him forward as a suspect in July of 1971. And his name was Donald Lee Cheney. And he's what sucked me into this case when I heard him on that video. His name was Arthur Lee Allen, because in that video, he said that he would lick Arthur Lee Allen's stamps. And I thought, that's the most outrageous shit I've ever heard in my life. You licked your friend's stamps. Like, what is he, some serial letter writer? Why is he? Oh, he didn't like the taste of stamps. This is preposterous.
Right.
I thought, why would he say that? Because he's worried about his DNA showing up. He never said that until the advent of DNA, which obviously didn't exist during the Zodiac crimes, but they were already talking about getting DNA from the letters, and he was worried. So he comes up with this story. Well, I like the stamps. So because if his own DNA shows up, he's covered. He said, I told you I licked Arthur Lee Allen's stamps. So that's obviously why mine showed up. Of course, his DNA doesn't show up because they don't really have the Zodiac's DNA. But to make it even better, he says that he gave Arthur Lee Allen his thumbprint in a ball of paraffin wax. This is just such a crazy, weird story that you're like, dude, now I'm looking at you, Don. You're the one that brought forward the guy that was so interesting to the police that he still today is the prime suspect. But we need to look at you a little more. Your story doesn't add up, number one. And first of all, why did you wait? His story is that Arthur Lee Allen told him he was going to be the Zodiac killer. He went over there on New Year's Day. And this is where it gets really tricky, is that when he first goes to the police, he said that this took place on New Year's Day of 1968. Where Arthur Lee Allen got this watch for Christmas, the Zodiac watch, and he wanted to know if he got stiffed by his mom. And he says that he tells his buddy Don Cheney that day, he goes, you know what? I'm going to, because he's going over there to cheer him up from losing his teaching job at Valley Springs Elementary. So Don's going over there to cheer him up on New Year's Day. So the story goes, because it's a bullshit story, right? And Arthur Lee Allen tells him, you know what? I don't care about you getting a regular job now, Don. I'm going to become a killer. And I'm going to go kill couples on lovers' lanes. I'm going to call myself the Zodiac because I think it sounds cool. And, I don't need a good resume to go be a killer. That's the story that Don Cheney tells. The problem is years later, Don Cheney moves his timeline from New Year's Day 68 to New Year's 69. And that was just a devastating, rare mistake by Don Cheney that he had to move that date, because later on he finds out that somebody actually did some digging and found out that Arthur Allen did not get fired from Valley Springs Elementary until March of 1968. So that's a big hole in his story already.
Oh, for sure.
So he has to move that timeline an entire year, and it causes a lot more problems for him. Well. So he's got my interest from the video. So I dissected this guy, everything I could find out about him, and circumstantial evidence blows away Arthur Lee Allen on his own. For Don. And then when you put these two guys together, like I like to say, it's Reese's peanut butter cups. Right. Chocolate, peanut butter taste great together. It was both of them. The circumstantial evidence that lines up with these two guys, nuclear bombs every other suspect in this case. And I know them all, well.
Right.
It even nukes the unknown suspect that people say, well, I think Zodiac's some guy we've never heard of. And once we ever find out, it'll be somebody that'll shock the shit out of you because we don't know who he is. Nonsense. The circumstantial evidence that exists between these two guys as a tandem is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. You cannot turn away from it. You start with Alan's watch, the misspelled words, and then you get into things that Don Chaney has going for him, like the Zodiac's favorite word, paradise, Paradice,
Right.
like a pair of dice. Don Chaney's wealthiest relative, his maternal grandfather's first cousin, is a lady named Mary Martha Ingersoll. Paradise,
Wow.
with that spelling, is a surname that's 1 out of 1.5 million. Back then, 1 out of 1.5 million people would have that surname. That's how rare it is. 1 out of 1.5 million.
That's incredible.
And the guy that brought forward the lead suspect has a relative, a rich relative. Not only she married an architect named Frank Paradise, who was an architect in Pocatello, Idaho. He's really well known, built a lot of buildings there, designed a lot of buildings. And she inherited a ton of money from a guy named Colonel James Ingersoll, a Civil War colonel, who had real estate holdings, money, and she was the executrix of his will with one of his daughters. So she was, by those days, I mean, a multi-millionaire. You would have known about that relative being that wealthy with that funny name. And that's his grandfather's first cousin. We're not talking about way down the tree. We're talking about his grandfather's first cousin is this lady named Mary Martha Ingersoll Paradise. Stunning. And then I find out, if people have seen the movie, well, the guy that is played by Robert Downey Jr. plays the role of Paul Avery, a guy that made himself famous by writing about the Zodiac. And he was the guy that was always getting sent correspondence directly from the Zodiac killer, including the famous Halloween card, which is really creepy, cryptic stuff. And that's been, talking about Crypt Rick. This is the most cryptic thing in the case. If you look up the Zodiac killer's Halloween card, and it was addressed to, he said it's from your secret pal, meaning Zodiac is sending it to Paul Avery. He's telling Paul Avery, the newspaper reporter, I'm your secret pal. Well, just me getting, just dogging Don Chaney because I know he's the guy already. And this came out after I wrote my book. I had to amend it to add this. He winds up, I find out, Don Chaney's from Bakersfield, California. He was born there in 1934. All the influences are all over Bakersfield, by the way. It's stunning. But anyway, I find out that Don Chaney went to Bakersfield Junior College. This is a little bitty junior college in Bakersfield. It's so small when Don goes there in 1952 that it shares the campus with Bakersfield High School, where Don went to high school. And they shared the same auditorium. It's called the Harvey Auditorium. So the college is about a fifth of the population of the high school, because most people weren't going to college back then. After high school, they'd get a career, go to the military or something like that. So it's a really little bitty junior college, just freshmen and juniors. And 1952, the freshman class probably had about 100 or so guys, maybe another 100 females in each class, about 400 total student population in 1952. Guess who's going to the college there then? Don Chaney and Mr. Paul Avery are in that little bitty college together in 1952. Wow. Could have maybe known who he was, Don, because when Paul Avery's at Bakersfield Junior College, he's all over the place. He writes for the school newspaper called the Renegade Rip. He runs for class president that year. Can't miss him. And most of all, in the early semester, the spring semester of 1953, because Avery's only there for 2 semesters while Don is there. Paul Avery is what they call the director of student assemblies, where there's a student assembly every Friday at Bakersfield Junior College, where they have an act come in from Los Angeles, like a well-known star. Sometimes they could get from Los Angeles because they weren't that far away, and it was early 50s, so it wasn't too hard. And they would have like singers and really interesting stuff, and you weren't required to go, but it was in the middle of your day, so why wouldn't you?
Right.
This really entertaining stuff. Well, Paul Avery put all that together, and before every student assembly, he would get up in front of the group and say, I'm Paul Avery. Today we have some singers in, and we have this other, act we're going to do for you, and all this kind of stuff. So you could not have missed them in this tiny little college. And these two guys are there together? Really?
Yeah, this is
small world. Yeah. Well, it gets better.
Oh my God.
The Bakersfield Junior College puts on a little show in May of 1953 while these two gentlemen, who were major players in the Zodiac case, any way you look at it, Don Chaney brings forward Arthur Lee Allen as the lead suspect. Without that, you don't have the book, you don't have the movie. Without Arthur Lee Allen, it's not interesting enough to even make.
Exactly.
Because you got to have somebody you're going to kind of pin it on that's kind of creepy and weird, and that's Allen. So without Don Chaney, you don't have Arthur Lee Allen. You don't have the book. You don't have the movie. So this is a major player. Paul Avery's a big enough player that you have to have Robert Downey Jr. playing the guy. So he's an important figure in this case.
For sure.
And these two guys that are major players are in that tiny junior college, that far away from the that far away from the Bay Area in 1952 and 53. It's stunning. And then in May of 53, while they're both attending that tiny college, the college puts on a little show called The Mikado. That's, of course, the Gilbert and Sullivan light opera that the Zodiac was obsessed with and referred to it in a lot of his letters, Tit Willow, and all the imagery that came along with the Mikado. The Zodiac, one of the things he referenced the most was the Gilbert and Sullivan play, The Mikado.
Exactly.
Bakersfield College puts that play on in May of 53, and all of Avery's buddies line out the lead roles, which is stunning. I mean, Avery's best friend from his high school, he didn't go to the same high school as Don Chaney. He went to Burroughs High School, which is a little further out, a place called China Lake, outside of Bakersfield. But all of Avery's buddies are playing the lead roles in this production of the Mikado. So this is just too many, I get where I call it the Zodiac trifecta, where you have Chaney, Avery, the Mikado all going on at the same time. This is the nucleus of the whole case going on in 1953, way before the first murders in December 68. This cannot be coincidence.
No.
There can be a coincidence once in a while, but not that thick.
Yeah.
Where these guys are on top of each other. The play is there. These two guys are there. Two major players in this case are there. And of course, Don never brings up, I remember Paul Avery. Of course he's not, because that's his secret pal. And that's why Avery's always getting the scoop, because he knew who he was from Bakersfield Junior College in 52. So, that's just the starters with Don. I mean, he's got so much going for him. Air Force 2 years, had celestial navigation training as an Air Force navigator. Chaney was a mechanical engineer. Think he might have known math, could do ciphers. Mechanical engineering, heavy mathematics. There was a bus bomb diagram the Zodiac sent, which is a chart showing the lines going to the bomb and all that. He's an engineer. This is simple. The Zodiac, one thing I can tell you 100% about the Zodiac killer, something he could do, it's called drafting. That's where you use.
Easy. Yeah, that's not
drafting's
easy.
not easy. Most people couldn't do it. If you look at the Zodiac correspondences and the things he drew and the ciphers, he was a draftsman. He could do thicker lines and thinner lines using what they call nibs, which are points of a pen that the draftsmen use.
I know a draftsman, so I know exactly what you're saying.
I've heard from many of them that said, absolutely. I've looked at this stuff. I've looked at the letters, all the correspondence said, this guy's a draftsman. There's no doubt about it. Don Chaney could draft. He was a mechanical engineer. That's the first thing they would train him to do, because he was a pipe stress analyst. So he'd have to draw thicker lines, thinner lines to represent different things. That's just off to the races with him. Avid big game hunter. This guy was an avid big game hunter. He would go for long days hunts out into the woods and kill different animals, eat the animals, live off the land. I mean, he was literally a mountain man. So he was a big fan of knives, carbon steel blades, sharpening his own carbon steel knives. And really interesting about Don Chaney, he learned from his maternal grandfather, the one that had the cousin named Paradise,
right?
How to make leather sheaths. He was a highly adept at sewing leather, making custom leather sheaths for knives. It's one of the things, one of the million. Yep. That cross circle logo was sewn. Don could sew all day long. I mean, he made leather sheaths. Brian Hartnell said the sheath for the knife that was used on him to stab him, and the one that killed Cecilia, he said the sheath for that. He said it was a foot-long blade, but he said that the sheath looked custom.
Yep. I remember
Guess who made custom sheaths? How many things? I mean, there's just too many going on with this guy.
That's incredible. Oh my God.
One of many. I could go for hours with it, with the stuff that you find in this guy's background. And it's like, you just have a suspect in your layering. If someone wants to call that layering, call it that, because it's stunning and it lays to waste any other suspect. It just does. I mean, it's just, he has too much going for him. He's got the math. He's got navigation skills. He's got, they drew the compass rose over Mount Diablo, famous Zodiac correspondence. Well, he was trained to be a navigator in the Air Force. He didn't stay with it. He only did 2 years and got out of the program, which is very rare. Like, something happened, because they don't put that kind of investment in you to have you drop out after 2 years.
Exactly.
So it's really weird. And he never stays at a job either, which is strange. He works for his friend Santo Panzarella which he actually helped him when he came forward with his accusations against Arthur Lee Allen. He has his friend go with him, a guy named Sandy Panzarella, who owned a company at the time. Then Don was working for him, his friend Sandy at the time, at a place called Science Dynamics that was doing computerized medical billing. That's not going to go anywhere, is it? I mean, Panzarella made millions of dollars, super smart electrical engineering guy, and gave John a job basically as the head manager at their headquarters. And he doesn't even keep that job. It's like, what is going on with this guy? I mean, you got a cush job working for your crazy wealthy friend. You're a manager, you're hiring, firing, and he doesn't keep that job. Why? It's just strange stuff with him.
Oh my God, this whole, and let me just tell people, this is why you have to get this book, guys, because I mean, Drew has broke it down here, and this book is amazing. So I'm going to show the book again, Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer. This is the book, guys. I'm going to leave a link for this in the description, and you have to pick this book up because it goes even to more detail. Drew covers all of what he's talking about in this great book. So definitely pick it up. I recommend it so much. And so definitely grab it. Now, Drew, what I wanted to ask you, I've had a couple people ask me to want to talk to you about your second book. Do you want to take
I can do that real quick.
Do you want to do a 5-minute break?
Yeah, I could. No, I don't need a break.
Okay, perfect.
Right into that one.
All right, perfect.
I love talking about that case too.
All right, perfect. Well, let's talk about your second book then, which, like I said at the beginning, I am waiting for in the mail because I love the way you write, so I can't wait to get this book here. So we are talking about Paratrooper of Fortune. Let people know what this book is about.
Well, that book is a person of interest. Like, obviously I just talked about person of interest of Zodiac crime. Yep. So this is a person of interest in the D.B. Cooper case.
Another crazy case. Boy, you know how to pick them.
Crazy. Yeah, I've always loved that. I mean, as far as getting into D.B. Cooper, I loved it since I saw Leonard Nimoy on a show called, of course, Mr. Spock had a show called In Search Of.
I remember that.
Came out about 1979.
79.
That's the first time I think I can remember hearing about the D.B. Cooper case. I was born in 69. And I heard about it. I was just like, whoa. I mean, who is this guy? Because they had this iconic image of this dude wearing sunglasses, this thick black tie like Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino stuff, smoking on the airplane. I thought, man, I want to know about this dude. Drinking and smoking and
yep.
just this just this folk hero guy he turned into. And to me, I thought that was just the epitome of cool. So, of course, D.B. Cooper's a guy that hijacks an airplane on Thanksgiving Eve in 1971. He goes through Portland International Airport. He buys a one-way ticket to Seattle for $20 cash. Like I say, he walks into the airport carrying a black anti-shake case, wearing a suit, black tie, pays $20 for this one-way ticket. He gets on the plane, and one of the flight attendants comes by, and he hands her a note, and it says, "Miss, I have a bomb, and I want you to sit by me." And she's like, first when he hands her the note, she thinks he's
flirting with her.
Just flirting with her. Yeah. So
yep.
she just puts it away, and he goes, "No, miss, I really need you to read that note." So she finally reads it, and she's like, "Oh crap, this is going to be a long day." Right. So she sits by him, and he gives her some written instructions about how much money he wants. He wants $200,000 in cash, $20 bills. He wants the plane to be flown a certain way. All these specific demands, and he always asks for the notes back. Clean, really smart stuff going on. She goes up to the cockpit and says, "This guy's hijacking a plane. What do you want to do?" So they called. It was Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, and they said, "Hey, just meet his demands. Meet his demands." She said, "I saw the briefcase. It's got a bomb in it. Right. It looks real to me." And no one's ever done this before. Now you think, yeah, right, that's a fake, but no one had ever done it before. So you had to take it, for real. It was full of passengers. So, the plane takes off. It's going to Seattle, and so they start calling ahead for them to meet his demands to bring to the Seattle airport to SeaTac, the money and cash. He asked for 4 parachutes, and this was brilliant. He asked for 2 front and 2 back. Well, why did he ask for 4 instead of just 1? You consider 1 just a set, a reserve in front and the main parachute in back. Well, why did he ask for 4? So they thought he would take a hostage with him. Brilliant. This is smart. This whole thing is just coming up with it was just genius. And so they land and they park far away from the terminal at SeaTac. while he's waiting for them to bring this stuff to him. And then at that point, none of the passengers even knew or ever knew the plane was being hijacked. None of them. The flight crew did, but none of the passengers did. Let off all the passengers in Seattle. All the passengers got off and went. Of course, when they got off, they were like, they were told, yeah, you were being hijacked by that dude in the back, and they were like, really? And it blew their minds. I mean, they knew something was wrong because they kept circling and killing time, and then they wondered why they parked so far, parked the plane so far away from the terminal, because Cooper requested that. So anyway, the passengers get off, the flight crew stays, the plane takes off from SeaTac, and somewhere, at some point he bails out of the back of the aft stair of the Boeing 727. And that's the most critical point of this whole thing, is that Cooper knew that plane had an aft stair that you could jump out of. He knew that. And that was top secret knowledge at the time. He actually, before the plane took off from SeaTac, he argued to leave the aft stair down. And this is a lower staircase that's in the middle of the back of the plane, right in the middle, where passengers could board that way, if they so chose. And he argued to have the plane take off from SeaTac with that staircase down, not up. And the pilots had never heard of that. They were like, no way, we can't do it. It'll damage the plane. And Cooper was arguing with them. No, it can. And Cooper finally relented and said, okay, you can go ahead and raise it. But he knew that plane could take off with that aft stair down, which is top secret knowledge. Not many people would know that at all. And so
that's what I found really, that's what I found really cool in the case when I started researching it, is that he knew that trap door was there. Like he knew
and he knew it could take off with it down. Yes. It means something. And he knew the plane could take off. And the only place they were ever doing that with the 727 was Vietnam. Covert stuff. And he had this knowledge. So during when the flight takes off again, he's got the money, he's got the parachutes. They brought the money to him in a canvas bag, not a knapsack that he asked for. So he's a little perturbed by that. So he immediately takes out a pocket knife and he cuts the shroud lines to one of the parachutes that he's not going to use. And he starts strapping the money around his body. Very smart. So he just overcame a setback, with a pocket knife, and just ties it around his body. And he helps Tina Mucklow was the flight attendant that sat by him most of that time. And she helps him lower the aft stair down. And then he tells her to go back up front to the cockpit. And so at some point, the flight crew or the two pilots felt a pressure bump. And they think that was, him jumping off of that aft stair and causing a pressure bump in the air. So D.B. Cooper's never seen again, ever. Nothing comes up in the entire case until 1980. We're talking about 9 years later. A young boy, 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram, finds $5,800 of D.B. Cooper's loot on a bank shore along the Columbia River called the Tina Bar, T-E-N-A bar. And there was 3 stacks of bills, $20 bills that were degraded, found on top of each other. And he was just looking to find a little firewood. They were having a little picnic. It was, I think it was February of 1980, and it was cold. And the little boy was just looking for some wood for a fire, and he finds $5,800 of D.B. Cooper's loot. And of course, all the serial numbers were recorded, so it was all verified to be D.B. Cooper's money. And that becomes a separate mystery in the D.B. Cooper case of how the money got there. And that's still hotly debated, who D.B. Cooper was and how the money got there in 1980.
Right.
Two separate things in one big case.
Right, because I saw that in the documentary that I saw when they found that money, that it doesn't make sense how it got there. And so some people are
makes
saying
no
that
sense at all.
Yeah, like they're trying to say that he drowned and it went down the river, that it got, like it ended up on the shore. They were arguing about where the shoreline really was. Like, did they dredge? It's
been washed away by now. Yeah. It was dredged actually, but they've proven that the dredge couldn't have deposited that money up onto that beach.
Exactly.
They've also did a lot of research. A group called the Citizen Sleuths, headed by a scientist named Tom Kay, that made all his money in paintball by revolutionary a paintball gun. Really smart guy. Really smart. He actually, one of his biggest discoveries was he had some of the money that survived and put it under a powerful electron microscope and found diatoms on it, which is like an algae or something. And he found out that the diatoms on that money could have actually occurred in the summertime, not in the wintertime when Cooper jumped. So that heavily points away to that money getting there by natural means. I think the consensus is becoming in Cooper world that money was planted somehow, some way. What did not get there by natural means. 3 stacks of 20s. The rubber bands were actually still intact, which is crazy. They were brittle, but they were still around the money, which is crazy that many years later. And they did studies on the rubber bands and all this crazy stuff. But the money had to have been planted. There's really no way around it. But even at that, it's still really strange that it was planted. Who did it? Why did they do it? Why would they leave $1,500, which is, $200,000 back then, like the whole loot? It doesn't sound like a lot today, but in today's money, that'd be about $1.3 million.
Exactly.
So a little more than you think. That's the mystery.
Yeah, and he's smart because he could have asked for any amount of money that he wanted, but he knew he was making this jump, right? So I think he calculated in the exact amount he could carry.
The weight.
And then so he must have been, like, I've heard people think that he's a skydiver, professional skydiver. I've heard so many stories on this case. It's crazy, the amount of stories.
The FBI wanted you to believe. The FBI wanted you to believe he wasn't a good skydiver.
Yeah.
They always pointed towards the fact that they think he took the wrong parachute because they brought him 4 parachutes.
Yep.
There's bizarre stories about who even owned the parachutes.
Yep.
There's still debate about who actually owned them between a guy named Earl Causey and a guy named Norman Hayden. And they kind of argued about who, Norman Hayden said, no, they're mine, but maybe Earl packed one. And then Earl said, no, they were mine. And strangely, Earl Causey was murdered. I think in early 2000s or something. He was murdered in his driveway, like a violent crime, like hit in the head, like absolute murder. And people always thought maybe that's connected to Cooper. Really strange, but I don't think it could have been just random. There'd been some stuff in the area, but really strange rabbit hole in this case was the murder of Earl Causey. But the FBI would point to the fact that he was given a choice to take more of a sport parachute that could be steered easily,
and then the one that
a military parachute called a Navy Backpack 8 with the C9 canopy, which is a pit bull of a parachute. And more that people like a guy like Mark Metzler, who's a big DB Cooper guy, a researcher, really smart guy. Avid parachutist. He's jumped with military gear, sport gear. He's been, for 40 years, this guy's been a jumper. He's really good and really into this case. He's totally done a lot to dispel any notion that DB Cooper was a novice jumper. He's totally proven that he was an experienced jumper, and he absolutely chose the right parachute coming out of a jet because the wind drag is enormous coming out of there. At 200 miles an hour, it would have shredded a sport parachute.
Exactly.
So he absolutely picked the right chute in a Navy conical type parachute, military chute is what he chose. So
and do you think it makes sense? Yeah, like I always thought that too. That he knew the chute to pick, and I thought that too because of the drag of the plane. If he would have took one of those ones that are really the ones you can steer really good, and they don't look very durable, but the military ones,
they couldn't have taken those high winds. And Cooper told him how to fly the plane at what to put the wing with the settings for the wing flaps and the speed, which I think was 200 miles an hour. But at 200 miles an hour, that is a ton of drag. Like even between 150 miles an hour and 200, it's not just like a 25% jump from 150 to 200. It's really it's like an earthquake, and like the magnitude's different. It's like double or something between 150 and 200. It's not just 25% of the coefficient of the wind drag or something that the Mark really got into. Like he absolutely picked the right chute. And they like to say that, or I think Earl Causey would say that, well, one of those chutes, like one of the front chutes, which is a reserve, was actually for training, and he had sewn it shut. But most of those hardcore jumpers back then, they never used the reserve. Very rarely. And that reserve didn't even have the I think they call it the D rings, the reserve would attach to the back one. It didn't even have them. So there was really no need for the front chutes. It was just something that Cooper asked for. He really just needed one good back chute, main parachute to survive.
Incredible. And so what do you think? Do you think he was, I've heard people think he was a pilot. Some people think he was military. Some people, what do you think from the research you've done?
I think he was a military guy.
I think
he was elite special forces, the most elite of Vietnam special forces in Vietnam. Of course, they considered that when it happened. This looked like a special forces type deal. A smart guy, briefcase bomb, clean, asked for the notes back.
Yep.
Never got rattled. That's the thing about DB Cooper. He never got
That's what
never
I
got
found.
rattled.
That's what I found funny.
He was calm. He was
Yeah,
calm. I mean,
smoking
you're gonna
cigarettes,
smoking cigarettes, drinking a bourbon. I mean, and he was calm. By all accounts, he was calm. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't shaking. I mean, you would have. I mean, somebody pulling that off would have been a nervous wreck.
Oh, I would be.
Even if you
sure.
were trained, even out of highly trained guys, even out of special forces, that's a rare. It's a rare attribute, but I believe he was elite special forces, which is a group in Vietnam that was called MACV-SOG, stands for Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. And that sounds like a really benign guys that went out and look at plants or something. But when you hear Studies and Observations Group in Vietnam, these guys were the Black Ops unit. They had 100% casualty rate. Like when you joined to be a member of SOG, they said you'd either be awarded a Purple Heart or given a body bag because the casualty rates were so high. So these guys, when you joined, you had to sign something that said you can't tell anybody about what we do for 20 years, not your wife, girlfriend, mother. You don't tell anybody for 20 years. This is secret, covert stuff. They're going what they call across the fence into places like Laos, which we weren't supposed to be there because of the Geneva Accords, but they were dropping these guys in, going what they call sterile, where you couldn't have no ID tags, anything identifying you as American or your name. You couldn't have any of that on there in case you got captured. You had to give our government plausible deniability, as they called it. But these guys were going in there doing prisoner snatches, wiretaps from the North Vietnamese communication lines going down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And they were tracking these guys as soon as they hit the ground. Of course, they'd have to parachute in. Really dangerous stuff. I mean, these guys were the baddest of the bad. I mean, people think that the SOGs were the most elite, toughest group of military guys ever, way more than even the Navy SEALs. These guys were absolute killer badasses.
Yeah, and it would explain why he was so calm, right? Because you have that type of training.
Yeah, coming out of that.
You'd be
coming
so
out
calm.
of this elite group.
Yep.
I mean, where the legends were. And so when all this stuff that they did that was covert, when the 20 years burned out, they could talk about it. And people are like, wait, I haven't heard of this. Because, you couldn't. We were not supposed to talk about it. But after the 20 years would burn off, after the final SOG groups were over in the early 70s in Vietnam, they could talk about it. And, of course, when the subject of D.B. Cooper ever came up, people say, you guys were the most elite in Vietnam. Who among you do you think could have done this? And it's funny that only one name would come up. I mean, we're talking about the most badass guys ever in Vietnam, and only one name's coming up. That guy needs to be looked at. Who is he? Who is this guy you're talking about that would pull this off? And out of a, I think there was like 1,200 guys that were ever in that group, MACV-SOG. And plenty of them could have pulled it off. These guys were doing jumps into Laos at night, lots of night jumps. No sport jumper, rarely any sport jumper has night jumps. It's so dangerous.
For sure.
And these guys were jumping in combat, getting shot at, jumping out at night. So I'd say all of them probably could have done it. So it really begs the question, why does only one name come up when you're asked about it? Well, I think I found out why. But the name that kept coming up from these guys was Ted B. Braden. And this guy was they said he was the most balls out guy that ever went over to Vietnam. I mean, even out of special forces, these guys said, this dude is different. This dude is not scared of anything. He's crazy. He'll do anything you can think of. Like he would just shock you with what he could do. I mean, he was a true super soldier, but he was mentally ill, maybe from PTSD or just born that way, but He would do crazy things. They said he was one of those guys that had a secret death wish, but amazing abilities, amazing instincts for survival. Like he could push the envelope of death. Like he did not fear death, but he had something about him that always got him coming out alive. And he was a team leader in SOG. They were called recon teams, or RT. He was on a team. They named him after states. And he was on RT Colorado, and he was what they call a 1-0. That was a team leader. And it was made up of 7 guys. The first 3 were Americans, and the balance of the teams were what they call indigenous fighters to the area, what they called mountain yards, tribal fighters that were trained by U.S. Special Forces. So Braden's the team lead in 1965 of Team Colorado, and he does the first successful wiretap of a North Vietnamese communication line in Laos. This is crazy stuff. Wow. They crawl up the pole, and they put a device on there, and they intercepted all this intel. They knew where General was going to be. Really important stuff. So he was the first team leader and first team to do a successful wiretap in Vietnam. He was also given all the goodies because he had all these CIA contacts. He was given the first night vision scope in Vietnam called the Starlight. And he got mad one day on the trail. He would do crazy things when he took his guys, and he always got them out alive. But he would take a lot of unnecessary risk just because he felt like he couldn't die. I guess he would walk on open trails over in Laos, which is a no. That's where you would get killed immediately. Yeah, he would just go. He'd walk on an open trail. I mean, the guy, I knew his assistant team leader, Jim Hetrick, which is a big help to me when I wrote this book because he knew him so well. He would say he couldn't believe he never died being under Braden's command because he would just do crazy stuff. He took that Starlight scope, which was really like a prototype. It was first, this was cutting edge in 1965 to see at night. And he got mad one day and he smashed it on a trail, glass everywhere, which was a huge no. If the NVA saw that, they would track you and kill you.
Right.
And it wasn't pretty what they would do to those guys when they caught them. They torture you first. You'd rather be killed by, your own, what they call positive capture. And if they knew that would happen, your own guys would kill you from the air. So you wouldn't get, you'd be tortured anyway. You want to die. So really, really crazy stuff. And that's what Braden comes out of. But the interesting thing is this is a guy that they pointed to as being Cooper because of the way it went down. Not just because he knew what the 727 could do, and that was secret, but legends, Special Forces legends, a guy named Billy Waugh. This guy is one of the top Special Forces legends that ever lived. He was in this, either Special Forces or involved with the CIA for his entire career. He wrote a book called Hunting for the Jackal. This guy's been, in the mountains of Afghanistan as an old guy hunting down terrorists and stuff. This guy's an absolute badass of all time. And he said of Ted Braden, he said he had balls of steel. And that's coming from Billy Waugh. Holy crap.
That means
balls of steel. Balls of steel coming from Billy Waugh, who invented balls. And that is a huge compliment. Like, this guy is different. And I got to know about him. Another guy called Major John Plaster, another Special Forces legend, pointed to Ted Braden as being D.B. Cooper.
Incredible. I can't wait to get your book. I'm so excited I ordered it. So that is amazing. Thank you for giving us a touch on that book. And that's another, I'm going to leave a link for you. I'll put a link for everybody in the description to get that book too. So let everybody, before I let you go, Russ, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us about your books and about these cases. You are welcome back anytime to come and chat about this stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm having such a great time talking to you. Do you want to let anybody know where they can find you? Do you have a website, YouTube, anything you want to let people know?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Drew Beeson, Beeson. Lots of stuff that I'm talking about. If you don't like to read books, almost everything I have is in my videos on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
So I'm not a big reader myself, but so a lot of it's there for free on YouTube. So check it out. I have a website called drewbeesonbooks.com, and then of course everything's on Amazon.
Okay, perfect. And I'll make sure I leave links for you. Everything that he just said, guys, I'll leave links in the description. There'll be a lot of links in this one. So definitely check that out. And I just want to thank you once again, Drew. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with me. And I had such a great time. I've been captivated this whole interview and I've learned so much. And so thank you so much. And as I said, you're always welcome back, Drew. Anytime you want to touch base, you write another book, anything like that, you are welcome here.
Oh, I appreciate it, Rick.
All right. You have yourself a great evening, Drew, and I will keep in touch with you. And thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Have a good night, brother.
All right, bye.
Well, there we go. Another amazing interview with Drew Beeson. Oh, my God. What a super cool interview. As you can tell, I'm excited. I'm so fascinated by true crime and stuff like that. I have been like that since I can remember. I've always found that really, really interesting. And wow. I mean, as I said, I'm going to show the book one more time because I want everybody to see this. And the lighting, let me just get out of the light here a bit. There we go. There it is. Sighting in on the Zodiac Killer. Right there. Make sure you pick this book up. This was such a good read. And I'm so fortunate that Drew took the time to come and chat with us about this book and about his other book, which, like I said, I do have on order. It was supposed to be here a week ago, and I still haven't got it, but that happens from time to time. So definitely, Paratrooper of Fortune, definitely grab that book as well. And I'm so excited now after Drew broke down that case, the Cooper case, and all of the great stuff that he just told us. I'm super excited to get that book too, because I mean that's going to be an amazing read. I can guarantee it. So, great stuff. I really have such mad respect for authors. I really do, because I don't like, to me that's such a hard thing to do, writing a book. And I mean, I've had Greg Fernandez Jr. on here. He's wrote a book. Catherine Michelle, who I've interviewed, she's written a book. And then I've had Drew on. He's written a few books. So I mean, it's just like I was saying at the beginning, and I was telling Drew about it before the interview, that I'm like trying to write a book just about my life. And it sounds so easy, just write a book about your life. It's simple. It's your life. Write it. Yeah, try that sometime. Because I tell you, like I told Drew, I got 500 pages and it's just a mess. Like, nothing, I don't know. I mean, I'm not even through my whole life yet. I think I still only got halfway through my life. I still got all the other half to do. It'd be a 1,000-page book when I'm done. And who wants to read a 1,000-page book? I mean, not on somebody's life. You don't. Not, at least not my life. I mean, so how do you shrink down a 1,000-page book of your life to like 200, 300 pages? I mean, it's incredible. So I have mad respect for authors. I really enjoy interviewing them, because you can see their passion of this when they talk about the subject that they wrote about, and you can see that clearly with Drew. Like, you can tell he's really put a lot into these books and into the research, and it's something that he really enjoys doing, and I love that. I just think that's amazing. So I'm really fortunate that Drew took some time to come and chat with us. I hope he comes back in the future, and we can talk more about each case, because we basically just scratched the surface. I just wanted people to get an idea of what will be in the books, and then, that way you can pick up the books and definitely read them, and it goes into a lot more detail. I can at least say that for the Zodiac book, because I have read that one. And I'm assuming it's going to be the same for the other one too, that it's going to be definitely more in depth, and I'm going to learn a lot more, so I'm excited for that book. I can't wait till it shows up, and then maybe I'll see if Drew will come back once I'm done reading that book, and we can dive into that book and talk about that for a show, because I think they'll be great. I'm sure I'm going to have a ton of questions for Drew after I read that book, so hopefully he'll come back. It'll be another great interview, and just want to thank you guys. As I said at the beginning, I thank you guys so much for coming and spending time here, checking out my interviews. I enjoy doing these so much, and I enjoy having you guys come and check them out, and when I premiere them, talking with you guys in chat. So I really do appreciate it. If you do enjoy these videos and you haven't subscribed yet, please like, share, subscribe. Get it out there, let other people see it, recommend it to your friends. Make sure the notifications are turned on, because that way I got a ton of videos coming up very soon by a lot of different amazing guests that you're going to want to check out. So make sure you get those notifications. I'm also once a week going to start doing a show. I've done 2 so far, where I just break down. It's just music, and it's just, I love music. Anybody that knows me at all knows that music is a huge part in my life. Definitely heavy metal, hard rock, but I do like all styles of music within reason. I mean, there's some that I don't like, but most music I can find common ground and like it. So, but I definitely lean more towards heavy metal and hard rock and stuff. So I'm going to do that once a week, where I just talk about an album that I really like, or a band and stuff like that. So I've done 2 of those. I've done one on Meatloaf. God rest his soul. He did pass away recently. And then I did one on the album Kiss Alive. And Kiss was a huge band, as I said in that quick little video. I'm trying to keep them down to about 15 minutes, because I do know my interviews run long. So I just wanted to do a quick 15, 20-minute, interview. I always call it an interview, just a video, I should say, on a band I like, or a song, or an album, or what it is. It's just music related. So if you're a fan of music, and I think a lot of you are, please check that out. Leave comments, let me know if there's a band that you want me to review, or a song or a new band or anything like that, just leave a comment in those videos, and then I will do that, and I'll do a quick little video about it, let you know what I think. So that'll be a lot of fun. So definitely do that if you have a band that you want me to check out. It could be an older one, could be a newer one. I'm definitely looking for newer stuff to listen to. So, and I will be reviewing very soon a new band that I just started listening to. They're not like a new band, but it's a new band that I discovered. Somebody recommended to me heavy, I wouldn't say heavy metal, but definitely hard rock. And I love this band. I've been listening to them for a week solid now, and I love all the stuff I've heard. So I'm going to be doing a review about that, so look forward to that. And just to wrap it all up, just to let everybody know that you can also find me at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and I'm there twice a week. Saturday nights is my 1-hour show from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio B, and that is where I just talk about music and movies. It's just a fun hour show that I do, and I enjoy doing it. Cover lots of cool like bands and stuff like that. Basically like my little 15-minute videos I'm going to be doing on here. And then my 2-hour show is on Monday evenings from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but that's Studio A, and that's where I do interviews and a lot more serious topics and great stuff. A lot of great hosts at Revolution Radio. A lot of great topics are being discussed, and it's an amazing place, so definitely go check it out. It's pretty much 24/7 that there's interviews going on and lots of different hosts covering, like I said, tons of different topics. So definitely check it out. I think you will really like it. A lot of great information there. So, and it's all listener supported, which I totally love. So please check that out. And I just want to let you guys know that I always say this at the end. What makes you interesting? What makes your story interesting? Well, I'll tell you what makes it interesting. It's your unique story. And that is what makes it interesting to me. So take care, guys. Stay safe. And I'll be back with another video very quickly. So please come back, enjoy yourself, and maybe we'll all learn something together and have a great time. Peace, guys.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.